Blain Putvin, and my co-hosts Trege Wilson and Matt Smith are joining me, as well as a special guest, Laura Saba, aka the Active Stick from Locked On Canadiens. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be really fun.
We've been waiting a long time for your return, and it's
It
finally
has
here.
been a while. It has been a
It
while. I
has.
think it was last October that I was last on. Not that I'm counting.
Yeah. Well, it took that long for you to get down to the bottom of all the messages that you got to get to mine.
Let's go with that. I like yours better.
Yeah, we ignore Blaine's messages too. It's okay.
He's always like, "Didn't you guys see what we're going to talk about?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I read it."
I totally did.
And then we get on.
Somebody
like, what are you
reads it
talking
to
about
him.
again? What are we talking about again?
Yeah.
These are so welcome for me writing all this stuff. Anyway,
we love you though.
Someone's got to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the dead of summer. Most people are out enjoying the beaches and the sunshine, but not us. We're talking hockey. So, Laura, I believe this week you guys were talking about prospects on your show, correct?
We are. I'm so excited you brought that up because I got to learn a lot. So it was originally supposed to be one episode, but we talked for so long that I got 3 episodes out of it that I'm releasing, 3 times this week. We started by talking about the defense prospects because I wanted there to be a little bit more of a positive vibe. After the draft, I think a lot of people were just sort of taken aback by the Canadiens' decision, and there was a lot of negativity involved. There's also a little bit of negativity surrounding Philip Machar. So I got to talk to the hosts of Locked On NHL Prospects, Hattie and Sebastian, and we talked a lot about Leighton Hudson's progress. Again, I wanted really positive vibes. We talked about David Reinbacher's ceiling and what he's actually going to bring. Like, we removed all the context of the draft aspect of it and just as a prospect, what he's going to bring. We talked about Adam Engstrom because he seemed to come out of nowhere, except for people who were paying attention, obviously. But as fans, we didn't really expect him to be in the Montreal Canadiens prospect pool this time last year. I think it was really good insight. But I think one of the big things was for me, what we talked about was Philip Machar, because I think a lot of fans have just kind of either forgotten about him or have been down on him a little bit. But, we needed, I think, the more casual prospect observer needed a little bit more context as to his situation. And we really think that, this next year is going, or after listening to Hattie and Sebastian talk about it, I really think that this upcoming year is really going to allow him to show Canadiens fans what he could potentially bring to the table, were he to reach his ceiling. And I think having him in Laval, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later in today's show, but having him in Laval is really going to help his growth in many ways.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people do hockey DB scouting. They look at the point total and that's it. They don't put any context to it. Like with Machar, the reason why most people were kind of down on him, his numbers weren't amazing, but they take it out of context because Kitchener was a shit team. But then when they made the playoffs, they knocked off a powerhouse in Windsor, thanks to him. Nobody really pays attention to that. They just look at the point totals and are like, he got 5 points. Meh. Well, they don't see everything around it.
I like how he brought up Reinbacher and the negativity. I'm actually in a little debate on Twitter as we speak about Reinbacher. Now, I compare him to a Roman Josi type player, but not point production Roman Josi. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the style of play and his size and the way he plays the game. Yes, I get Roman Josi scored 96 points last year. That's an anomaly. We're not going to bring that up again because he did it once in his career. But he's generally a 60-point player. I see Reinbacher as a 40 to 50-point defenseman, which to me, for his style of defense and what he does, is what you need. And you put him on a line with Leighton Hudson, he doesn't need to get any points because Leighton Hudson, it's going to be like a PK Subban, Josh George type connection. Josh George did his thing, and PK Subban said, all right, I'm going to play with the forwards, because he knew with Markov or George at that back, he's going to be covered. And I think that's what people are missing out. And I think that's what Gorton and Hughes see. They see You have a Hudson with a Reinbacher. You have a Gooley with maybe a Mayu. And that's what we got to start looking, looking at. They're trying to pair up the future of their defense. They're not just, oh, we think he's going to be really good. No, we think he's going to be really good, but I think he's going to be really better with this guy. And I think that's what people are missing out on.
Yeah, and I spoke to Kirk Fury a couple of times over the summer about Reinbacher, about some of the other prospects the Canadiens have, but he really focused in on Reinbacher, and he was just in awe of this kid's skill set. Because Trege and I covered the World Juniors, we were there watching them play, and when we talked to them after the games, you could tell that Reinbacher was completely done. He was wasted, exhausted, and Coach Fury would tell us he's getting IVs. He's spending the entire time in bed between games. Like, he played that entire tournament sick, and he was still one of the better defensemen there.
On probably the worst team.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right. I think for me, what gets missed a lot of times with defensemen is that you could have somebody who's really good at keeping the puck out of the net, but that's all they do. And Reinbacher is not that, right? Like, he's not going to be your offensive dynamo. That's not what we're looking for from him. He can keep the puck out of the net, but he brings so many other things that are going to complement the rest of the players on the ice that a lot of, quote unquote, stay at home or shut down defensemen simply don't have, right? Like, it's no longer about getting in the way of the puck. Like, he makes so many good decisions. I think, the way that he plays, you're covered exactly as you pointed out. Like, somebody who's a little bit more creative can take some risks knowing that he's partnered up with Reinbacher. And I think that's something that we miss a lot. And I think it's just because he's not that flashy, right? But if you look at the elements of the game, they're very refined. Like, he's very good at the little things that he does. And I think that gets missed a lot because he's not one of those players that was so overhyped or so hyped up. He was hyped up a little bit. People were comparing him to Cider and everything like that. I think for me, a Roman Josi, I saw that actually on social media. I can't remember which one it was. And I was like, I'm going to go look at the comments later because I want to see what people say about that. But I think it's true. I think just like the mannerisms, the approach to the game is very similar.
He does idolize Roman Josi, and he does emulate him in his style of play. So it makes sense that he would look a little bit like that.
I mean, he's not gonna run the power play. Hughes already said that, so he's not gonna get the points Josi got. But I think that's where this guy that I'm talking to, that's all he focused on. Well, Josi got this many points. He gets this many points. I'm not talking. There's more to defense than points. There's more to the game than points. Have you seen this guy skate? Have you seen the way this guy edges? Have you seen the way this guy carries the puck not out of the D zone but through the neutral zone? Yeah, he may not put up a lot of points, but he's going to get you in an area where you can score points and the offense is going to flow. And a lot of people talk about how, oh, we have no offense. We need a Mitchkov. We need this guy because we have no offense. But you're creating offense from the defense. So that's going to generate more offense. So you have possible 50 goals scorer in Cole Caulfield that everyone seems to think we have no offense. But when you had Doc, Suzuki, and Caulfield on a line together, they were all point per game players. When they were playing together, you had a line that was dominant in the NHL until injuries and everything started happening. Whether that stays consistent, I don't know, because I think Doc's going to end up as a center, so I don't think he'll stay on that line. But you have a potential 50-goal scorer, and you're saying we have no offense. You have a potential 80-point center in Suzuki, but you say we have no offense because all you're doing is looking at, well, he only had 66 points. He played with nobody for 90% of 60% of the season, and he still got 66 points. That's what, I don't know. It's just, I agree with you, Blain. Everyone looks at Hockey DB or Hockey Reference, and they look at the point total and they go, oh, well, he's no good. And then they don't look at, I like that, the finer details in the game. I'm gonna put that on my work signature.
On your scouting reports.
Yeah, on my scouting reports.
The finer details of the game.
I'm definitely stealing that from my
put that
my
in
scouting
put
reports.
that in cursive at the bottom. Yeah.
Well, you're asking a lot now.
Yeah.
That's hard to do for the younger generation. Because back in my day, they taught that.
Teach him how to do a rotary phone and write it all in cursive. Entertain him for hours.
Well, I mean, you could have them moving Pepsi cans from one case to the living room. I mean, you could do that.
I did have my grandson doing that. He did that on his own. That was his own unique whatever it is he was doing.
Did it work?
What?
You're talking about the Pepsi cans like on a string, right?
No, I had cans in a little bucket by the fridge because we couldn't fit any more in the fridge, and he decided to take them out of there and put them on the TV stand in front of the TV.
Got it.
It just went back and forth, and I don't know, I guess he got bored of Miss Rachel, so that's what he started doing. So.
The fun of children.
Especially ones you can give back.
Yes. Those are my favorite. I love those ones. All right, so we've talked about the prospects a little bit. Now, that brings us to the logjam on defense. There's going to be a ton of defensemen, several in Laval, but we'll start in the NHL and we'll look at the lineup that they have. And Laura, you're the guest, so I'll ask you first. Who would you keep on the blue line in Montreal?
All right, so this is something that I'm glad you asked because I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. As a person who, like, you know, we host a podcast that's like at least 3 days a week, usually 5, right? The number of correspondence we get that is so in a rush to trade Jordan Harris. Why are you doing this? Why does everyone want to get rid of Harris? He is one of the people I would keep because he's forever going to be cheap. He's forever going to be reliable. He's forever going to take control of the game in the moments that he has to. And people just don't see that because, again, they're looking at like you said, the hockey DB or whatever. Like I'm like so passionate about this. Trade mistake-prone people. He does not make mistakes. Trade people that like other teams are looking at and will overvalue and overpay for. So I'm definitely like the first person I'm keeping is Jordan Harris because he's never, again, and he doesn't even have to play in your top 4, right? He doesn't. He can be your third pairing. He can be super reliable. He can be a number 4 defenseman, but I'm seeing on a good team, you have him as your number 5 or number 6, you are golden. Anyway, sorry, that's where I started.
And my defense, I think he would be the best bang for your buck on a return. That's why I suggest trading him because I think you'll get the most for him than you will the other D prospects.
Which I don't have a problem with because at least you're not undervaluing him and thinking of him as dead weight. That's the thing. For me, that guy is Justin Barron. For whatever reason, he seems to have this persona or like the style that you kind of like perceive looking from, he seems to be like an old school GM's like favorite type of player, right? Like that's the guy that they would overpay for. I might be wrong, but I don't necessarily see a GM that wouldn't at least give the Habs something for that. Given how far he came this year, he was a disappointment, I think, and there were some injuries. He started out a bit rough, but he came really far this year. So it still feels like that's the kind of depth defenseman that another GM would still pay for.
Now, on Harris, I agree with you, Laura. And Treg, you make a very good point on the trade value. But with Laura, your point on the cap, the fact that he is going to be inexpensive in comparison to the others, that brings a specific value because, like you said, it's someone who can play on your second pair. What's that going to cost you? $3 million with the giant jump in the salary cap? That's nothing in the grand scheme of things. And you have someone you can rely on for as many as 22 minutes a game.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of teams can boast that. So that's why the value, if you're going to trade Harris, like Treg said, it's got to be it's got to be high.
Well, first of all, you also got to think that Struble, Engstrom, and all these guys behind him are going to jump over. First of all, because of right now, I think the biggest trade chip they're going to have in the next 2 years is going to be Mike Matheson.
Yes.
because by the time they're ready to contend, Matheson's hitting his 30s. So in the next 2 years, you're going to be able to trade him for top value, which will give room for the Ghoulies, the Harrises, and the Jack Eyes, if you consider Jack Eye to be part of your core. Some don't. I do. I'm a huge Jack Eye guy. He can also play on the right, by the way. But it's going to give room. It's going to give a lot more room for them young guys to come up. So I think I'm kind of moving away from the Harris thing and moving into the Mike Matheson's going to get you a big haul if you can get rid of him in the next 2 years at least, because he's still going to be under 30. He's still going to be, or he's going to be around 30. He's still going to be putting up the numbers. He's still going to be relatively whatever, and he can help a contending team. But he's not going to be that when the Canadiens are ready to contend. And then you're left with the salary and him just being in the way of a prospect. That's my view on it. And I think Engstrom's going to surprise a lot of people.
He is, yeah. Well, we watched him at the World Juniors as well, and I came away thoroughly impressed by how steady he is. He's kind of like the Swedish Harris.
Yeah, we talked to his GM too, down in Nashville, Linus Karlsson.
Yeah,
yeah,
we did.
The Swedish Harris
for a couple of Bud Lights.
Yeah,
the Swedish Harris. That sounds like I don't know, like an alternative rock band song name or something. Like I can't think of any right now. I don't know. Anyway.
But man, they have great hair.
Like a Mumford and Sons or something. Yeah, there you go.
I think with Matheson, the big key thing is if he can stay healthy for the next couple of seasons. That's the big thing, because if he's seen as injury prone, that's going to be an issue. But I think you're correct 100% on the fact that he's going to bring a lot of value.
Yeah.
Now we've kind of pointed to, okay, so Matheson's your top guy on the left side. You've got Harris is going to be in the mix, Gooley for sure. That kind of leaves Jack Eye right now as the odd man out. Do you see him playing on the right side, or is he going to do a rotation?
For me, I think it's one of those things where it makes me kind of sad, because I feel like eventually, like, I don't see the Canadiens taking too many steps to make room for him, because I think that you can still kind of see him as expendable. But as a story, as a guy, as somebody who's fun to watch, I love him. Like, I think they give it a try. I think they give, again, like, if he's your like extra defenseman, like, you're golden, right?
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Like, I love Jack Eye, but I do think eventually he's going to be one of the guys where, like, okay, we got to move this guy because there's no room for him anymore. I'm glad he brings more elements to the game than just fighting. He can skate, he can shoot. His offense is actually better than people think it is. His defense, he makes a lot of mental mistakes, but he doesn't make them twice in the same game, I find, which I enjoy in a young guy. We'll see how it does as he gets older, but I agree.
We're still talking about a 22-year-old defenseman, though.
Correct.
Right?
I mean, I love Jack Eye, but again, I think Laura's right. They're not going to go, well, we better make room for Jack Eye because he brings us this, because the big thing he does bring is kind of going away in the NHL. And so.
But it's still something that you need come playoff time and when you're playing against these other teams that are trying to get points from you.
But it's nothing that Gooley, Reinbacher, Mayu, if he's up on the team, can't provide.
But are these the players that you want doing that?
Oh no, absolutely not. But
no,
right?
Right, like Gooley has that side to him, but I would rather see Jack Eye stand somebody up at the blue line than a Caden Gooley, or have to fight somebody after a hit or something like that, just based on the extra positives you get at a Caden Gooley on the offensive side of the ice, on the minute munching defenseman type player that he is, right?
Yeah, you don't want him like in the penalty box, and you don't want him injured. That's the big thing.
Like, I'm looking at the defense core right now, and it is so young, and a lot of these guys were just pushed into positions that they had to be pushed into based on injuries, based on trades, based on just necessity, I guess, right? And I'm looking at them now, and yes, they're going to make mistakes, but hell, they were injured too. Guys like Gooley, who came out of preseason that looked fantastic, and we were like, oh, here we go. All of a sudden, he goes down with an injury, and Matheson's already out to start the year. You're starting the year, and David, I'm not pushing against, saying anything bad about David Savard. He's done what he has to do, but you start the season, he's your top pair defenseman.
He was actually a top pair defenseman all year with Gooley.
Right.
Like
right.
Gooley
So
healthy, but
I look at the young defense core, and who did they have to learn from? Right. I'm not, like I said, I'm not throwing a guy like Savard under the bus, but it's not like you had a legitimate top 4 defenseman that you're learning these skills from game after game. It's, Savard is a 5-6 on most teams.
they should have hired Markov for 10 games at least.
I was just about to say that. I was like, I am once again asking the Montreal Canadiens to bring Markov over as a coach.
10 games. That's it.
Yeah, but
All
as
I
a
gotta do
coach,
is-
I mean,
Start the game, get him to skate a circle. He can go off, and that's the end of
The Phil Kessel special.
it.
yeah. But if he was hired as a coach, how would he communicate with everybody? The man doesn't talk. Just sock puppets, interpretive dance.
Something like that. I don't know. He'd figure it out. But like for me, I think you're right though. David Savard, exactly like you said, Matt, he did everything that he had to do. The problem was that he was being asked to do so much more than he is. And when he was signed to that contract, I know it was an inherited contract, he was still like, he was signed to do more than he is. He was asked to do more than he is. And then with all the injuries, even the new regime wasn't able to put him in an optimal position because, again, they were relying on him a lot. And I find that, like, as in terms of the way you carry yourself, in terms of the way you train, in terms of your dedication and things like that, he's a great mentor for the younger guys. But in terms of the way that he plays, he's not really adding anything to somebody who's so skilled that they're already beyond him, right?
It'd be interesting to see Savard this. I just put an article out where I did the defensive pairings and the lines, or how I think the way too early line predictions. Now I have Savard paired with Gooley. I pretty much have almost like last year. Matheson's paired with, I have him with Barron, but I think that may change. I kind of just try to do right left. But the other issue with Savard is you have so few right-handed defensemen that you kind of have to put him in almost every situation. And the ones you do have are too young. Like, is Mayu going to make the team? Like, Bouillon seems to think he could jump in the NHL. I don't think he's going to make the team. I don't think there's any room for him. He may not even be allowed this year. I don't know. But you got to – Savard's a tough situation because basically you got to find a defenseman, Barron or Harris or someone that's going to play better than him in all situations for them to drop Savard down from the minutes that he plays, or he's going to stay doing what he's doing. Personally, I think he's gone by the trade deadline anyway, so we'll see. We'll see.
I think for me this year, like, this is my prediction. Obviously, there's no news at the time that we're recording this. Mayu will get reinstated this year, but he won't see an NHL game before next season, I don't think. And I think that the organization would want to see him play with Gooley and see if that works out, right? Like, I think that's what they're hoping works out. But I don't see him. I see a symbolic reinstatement, and then it's like we'll reinstate him, but don't play him this year. And I also just think that he needs to spend some time in the AHL because his development was so, it was so, I would say, sporadic. I don't want to say like it was, it was held back or anything like that. It was sporadic. He played and then he was suspended and then he was injured and then he was, and then this year he really, he brought things that people expected of him, but he brought it at an age where he's a lot older than you're expecting to see those things. So I really think that the Canadiens will play him in Laval. Like, I think he is eligible at this point, right?
Yeah. He just needs to be reinstated. Now, does he need to be reinstated playing Laval?
No.
No. He's not.
He just wouldn't be able to get called up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do think that before they play him in Laval, they want that stamp of approval.
Yeah. Just on the off chance that they have to call him up for injuries, which as we saw in the last couple of years, could very well happen.
He
No,
might be
they
an
got rid of all the
emergency.
guys involved. They got rid of all the guys that were the two trainers. You're done. You're doing a terrible job.
They're good now.
Yeah, because that
Homes won't break.
But
I don't.
the points you brought up on Logan Mailloux kind of bring us to how important Laval is to the Canadiens. Now you talk about how did this guy learn from, a veteran? Well, in Laval, they have a couple of, slightly older defensemen. I mean, they're not that much older than what the Canadiens have on their NHL roster, but they've been in the pros for a few more years. So there's kind of that element where a veteran's teaching skill sets to the rookies. But I think this year is a very important year in Laval, especially on the blue line.
I think somebody pointed this out, and I can't take credit for it. I really can't, because I didn't think of it, is that any NHL team that does see success, when they go, like, let's say, I don't want to say tank, I want to say, like, drafting high to contending, or at least, like constantly being a threat or whatever, they use their AHL teams not like AHL teams. They use them as literally a development league or like a development team. And those teams are the ones that are successful. And you always have to have those veterans to fill out those rosters. But what I find that I think Montreal is slowly starting to do, and I'm not happy that they didn't do it with Slavkovsky last year, is like really do play people in Laval, like really do kind of send people there, see what they've got, give them a little bit more time to marinate. I'm thinking of, what they're planning to do with Struble, or what I understand they're planning to do with Struble, or, Philip Machar, or, any player like that, where the player has an expectation of prolonged stints in Laval, right? Like, I think that's something that they're starting to do, but I haven't really seen all that much of it yet to be able to say, like, that's their philosophy.
I think it was kind of hard last year because of the injuries.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
with the less injuries, I don't think you would have seen as much of Harris. You wouldn't have seen as much as Barron. You probably wouldn't have seen Jack Eye at all. He probably would have spent the entire season in Laval. Goulet, I think, would have played. I think he would have started and played in Montreal, but maybe not as a second line.
Harvey Bernard probably wouldn't have got that contract. He would have got a contract, but he wouldn't have got the contract that he received.
Which was based on his point total of this year, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, Harvey Pinard's a good guy to bring up, because does he start in Montreal? And if he does, who's not starting in Montreal for him to start in Montreal? He's waiver exempt, so it's not like, I mean, Yolden hasn't been signed yet, but even without Yolden, they already have 13 forwards. Without Harvey
15.
Pinard, who else do they have?
Well, if you count Harvey Pinard,
if you count Harvey Pinard, yeah. But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, if you put him in Laval and you're going with 13 forwards, I don't see Huffman going to Laval. I'm sorry, I don't. He's in his
Everybody's
last
saying
year.
waive him. It's not happening.
He's in his last year of his contract. They're going to hope he has a big season. They're going to hope they can get something for him at the trade deadline. Armia, maybe you bury him in, but I don't see that happening either, because he can kill penalties. He's one of the better penalty killers on the team. Hate him. He also has more hat tricks than Cole Caulfield. So, having said that, but yeah, so I like Harvey Pinard. I don't think he's going to put up 20 goals like everyone seems to think he will. But just based on the way the roster is, he may not even make the team to start. That or Slavkovsky doesn't make the team and Harvey Pinard does, one or the other, because they're the only two waiver exempt.
I'm trying to imagine like the reaction of the fan base to that.
Well, you look at the amount of work that he's been putting in, and it's all over social media with all the training that he's been doing and everything. But you can do all the training you want. You've got to still be that product on the ice. And he's got to learn to keep his head up. He's got to learn not to take those hits, or, the guy's not going to make it to 25 in the league.
I see. Now I have a theory that he was in Montreal. They wanted him to work on his little things in his game, and that's what they focused on. And that's took away from his scoring and because when sometimes you seen him, you thought, oh, this is who we drafted. I like this.
Yeah.
And other times it was like,
I felt he was overthinking a lot.
Yeah.
He was trying to do those little fine pieces of his game a little bit too often. But again, I agree. there was times like the one that he stole the puck away and he did the quick shot on net and got in Buddy's face and was cheering and everything like that and pulling the sweater and everything. That was fantastic. That's what you want to see. And that's, and again, that's the reason that they picked this guy up. But then it's all the times where it's like, I'm a lot bigger than this guy. I'm going to hit him. And then all of a sudden he's out of the game, or he was getting his head down and getting taken out by small guys that just saw an opportunity.
I just think I don't see Slafkovsky being in Laval. That's why I'm looking at Harvey Pinard as the guy that starts in Laval. I just don't see them, after pretty much committing him to Montreal last year until he got injured. I just don't see them doing a 180 and saying, all right, we're putting him in Laval. I just don't see it. And you're right. I would love to see the reaction on Twitter. Half of them will be saying, I told you so. I knew it. And
It's going to be really interesting who they start him with, though. Are they going to start him with a more defensive player, or are they going to start him with someone like a Monahan?
I think he's on the third line with Gallagher. Might be Monahan, because Doc could be the second line center to start the season, because Dvorak's going to be out for a couple of weeks. So
and potentially traded away after that.
Maybe.
And then where's Newhook going to play?
Yeah, I think Newhook's going to be a winger. I think he's going to stay in the wing.
He starts the wing, yeah.
Personally, that's what I think. I don't think Newhook sees much center ice at all in Montreal. And I'm okay with it. Maybe he gets top line. Maybe he's that other. That'd be a fast line.
He's the missing piece.
Maybe.
It'd be a fast line, but it'd be some small.
Yeah. It'd be like the Smurf line. Petrov, Koivu, and who's the third one? Bure. Yeah. Man, I'm aging myself here. I got to stop.
Yeah. Trege's old.
Or maybe Slafkovsky goes up to that top line. Maybe I think that's where they want him. Move Caulfield back to the right with Slafkovsky as the left winger on that top line. That's where they want him. I just hope he progresses like Suzuki did. Starts in the fourth, third line and just works his way up to the lineup till he is where he has to be. That's all I hope for. And this shows improvement every year until he reaches his peak. That, or I'm never being a Canadiens fan again. Done.
Earn everything. Finished. It does look like with the development. Yeah. So the development plan that we've seen so far, it looks like what they're trying to do is what Laura mentioned earlier, and that's emulate teams that have shown success with development, like the Red Wings. They spent 25 years as one of the best development teams. And they played players in roles in the minors that they will play in the NHL. So you've got guys who score goals, you put them on your top two lines in the AHL, but you don't call them up to play on a fourth line. That's what we're going to see this year without all. If we could go a full season without seeing that team get hurt by so many injuries, that's what I believe we're going to see.
And I think, finally we have a development system in Montreal. For 10 years we didn't. 10 years we had, hey, let's put this guy here or that guy there. But you're absolutely right. Like you can't see a player like Gilonen not that I think Lowen's a top six, but he's at least a third line winger waste away on a fourth line. You can't see a guy like Mayu or Struble come out and play 9 minutes a game as a bottom pairing defenseman. If you're going to call them up, whether they're ready or not, you say, all right, you're going to be our second line. Your future is our R2. See what you can do. Go out and do it. But the problem is the NHL is not for developing. You're supposed to be able to do your job. And for years, Montreal didn't do that. They just stuck people where they wanted them. And if you failed, you got tossed down to a lower line. If you failed, you got tossed lower. Well, of course, this guy's going to fail. He doesn't know what he's doing yet. And but we have a new coach, not an old school mentality coach. You got a management team committed to developing. And so maybe it all changes. But until we get healthy, you're never going to know. And that's what happened. I think, like you brought it up, Laura. I think that's what happened last year. Just so many injuries, they couldn't keep people in Laval because they had no one to play.
I think another thing too is that there is a certain point where you get saturated, right? Like you've learned everything that you need to learn in the AHL, and then you can get called up, and you still follow a development path. It's just the expectations are much higher and your mistakes are more costly. So like what you definitely need, and Martin St. Louis to this point has kind of proven himself to be that person, is to give you chances as a team, right? Like even when a lot of these young guys are making the team, even when they're starting to hit their stride, not their peak, but their stride, I don't think the Canadiens are going to be good enough that like somebody's costing them a Stanley Cup because he was like, you know, he was called up from the AHL and it was his next step. Like I don't think they're ever going to be at that point. I think there's going to be a clear core emerge in 2 years time. We're going to see, you know, this is the core of the future, give or take a piece or two.
Matt?
Got anything on that?
I'm just
You're
looking
so
at some of
quiet.
I'm just looking at some of the young guys that are going to be coming into Laval this coming year, and putting a guy like, I say, Joshua Roy into a position of a top six right away in Laval could really just boost his development. I think putting him with Mitchell Stevens or putting him with Leas Anderson right off the bat, I think would be great for his development.
Philip
Same,
Massar
same,
is the
same thing as
boat.
Messer. Yeah.
Messer, yeah. I
Yeah.
would say Massar, but it's Messer.
Yeah.
Same thing for him. You can throw him in a top six and see what he can really do. I think you'll see them guys, and the confidence will get boosted because they're
Right.
like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. Let's go do this. And
Right. But at
it
the
doesn't
same
hurt.
time, but sorry,
No, I was just gonna say it doesn't hurt to stay a few years in the AHL before hitting the NHL.
right. But at the same time, they've got such an influx coming in. You got another guy like a Riley Kidney, but you don't want to have too many of the new guys on those top spots. That's when, say, Trois Riviere would be beneficial. Maybe one of those guys, like a Kidney, goes to Trois Riviere and he's their top line center and gets the minutes, right?
The only issue I have with that is level
Possible.
of play. That's the only issue I have with the ECHL. There's a clear difference of level of play in the ECHL to the AHL. A clear difference.
There is.
Right? So, I mean, I think I'd rather see Riley Kidney play a third line role in the AHL than a top line role in the ECHL personally. But that's just because of level of competition. But I see what you're saying. But to me, it's just level of competition.
Well, the good news is Riley Kidney looks like he's added a little bit of mass to his very lanky frame. Watching him skate this week, he looks a lot thicker than he did last year. Let's put it that way.
I'm interested to see where Vincent Aurora plays this year. If
He's playing in the
He's
Swiss
playing in
League.
Europe.
Playing in the Swiss League.
Is he?
I
Okay.
think he's in the Swiss League, I think.
Yeah,
I like him.
he signed a
like him.
2-year deal out in the Swiss League.
Right. But then Heineman's going to be over as well, and he's going to be in the AHL. Right. So it's going to be another guy who is brought in on a trade that we'll be able to see a little bit more of.
Heineman to me reminds me of Engstrom on the forward side. A lot of people kind of not forgot about him, but I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in how good of a player he is.
Now, this is one that this signing kind of confused me when it happened, but I wasn't that surprised by it. But Laura, what did you think of that Leas Anderson signing?
I honestly, I was confused by it too. It honestly feels sometimes that both Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon keep trying to reunite with players that they have high opinions of. And I understand that obviously if you're somebody's agent, you're paying a lot closer attention to his game, or if you're a GM that's worked with a player before. It kind of felt a little bit like a reclamation project, but I think it's pretty clear that he's set to play in the AHL. I don't think that anybody's expecting that he's going to like be a difference maker in the NHL by any means. It felt a little bit unnecessary unless it was for depth reasons. And I think, why not take a chance on a guy like that? Like he was drafted pretty high. It's not, if you're going to take a chance on somebody, like it's as good a deal as any, right? And it's not expensive. It's it's not something that's going to break the Canadiens salary bank or whatever we're going to talk about. Whatever they try and make whenever they want to like sign or trade people. Sorry, I keep like stumbling all over my words because I keep trying to figure out how to express how confusing this was to me. Like it's not a huge risk, I think is the bottom line, is that it's very low risk. They're buying low on a player that is still young enough to have some upside.
Yeah.
And
I
Bob
see it.
Ross.
I mean, he did.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the AHL last year, he had 30 goals. So
I see
at the
him
very
as a
least, you have
guy.
someone who can score there.
I see him as a guy that they brought in to replace an Anthony Richard, or even a Belzile at that level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He'll be the guy they bring up and down and try to get through waivers in order to fill in for injured players. That's what he'll be. I think, like you say, with the Riley Kidneys and the Hawaz and all these guys that you're going to have, the Massars, they're going to have,
Sean Farrell will be down there too.
Sean Farrell will be down there too. But instead of calling them up to the NHL when there's injuries, they'll go after Leas Anderson. We'll call him up.
Right.
Gallagher's out. All right, we'll call Leas Anderson up because he can either play or he can sit in the press box. We really don't care, as long as he
valid
goes
point.
back forth through waivers, of course. Right. That's what I think he is, and it kind of like it's like a Chris Weidman. I wouldn't be shocked if Chris Weidman goes to the AHL or tries to go through waves, and they do the same thing with him. It's like you said last show. No one cares if Chris Weidman sits in the press box for 17 games. But you're not going to do that with any of the young guys.
Right.
Yeah, there's no skin in the game on guys like Leas Anderson. So if their development misses, who cares?
And who's by some chance, if all of a sudden, like the way Richard kind of had that little comeback and he had not a bad little NHL spot when he got up there, maybe Anderson finds his game, and who knows? Diamond in the rough.
And then signs with another team in the offseason.
Yeah.
It gets 40 goals and 90 points with Minnesota or something.
And then the people that were complaining that he was signed in the first place are complaining that he wasn't re-signed.
Yeah. He had 27 goals. Why did you sign him?
It's the circle of Habs Twitter.
That's exactly it. It's Habs fandom in general. We were always like this. Yeah. Twitter just brought us all together.
Facts.
That's true. It's true.
Like
you should see the groupings.
You can't like Weber and like Subban. It's impossible.
No.
You have to hate one or the other. But I don't.
Is there like ways to tell each other, they're different gangs? Is it like West Side Story where you're dancing up to each other?
That's more Price and Halak.
That was an era too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an era when my kids were starting to become teenagers.
So you don't want to relive this?
Habs fans never change. Never change.
No. But we'll switch over to something a little bit more fun. I just mentioned West Side Story, but hey, why don't we talk about something even better? And that's Mel Brooks movies. We've talked about this last week, and I felt, this is a very important question, and it's a unique one to everybody. But what is your favorite Mel Brooks movie?
Do I go first? Is that?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna say two things actually, and people are gonna think it's weird. I have never seen either version of The Producers, but I have seen the musical that's based on it, and I think that was my gateway because I know it was based on the film that he made, right? Like the original one, I think it was in 1967 or something like that. And it's one of my favorite musicals. I think it is a genius piece of work. Like, I love that so much. So I don't know if that counts or not because it's not technically him and it's also not technically a movie. But if I can't count that, and I know people will be sounding off about this, but if I can't count that, it's got to be Spaceballs. And the other controversial thing that I'm going to say is that I know it's a parody of Star Wars. I've never seen any of the Star Wars movies, but Spaceballs is one of my favorite movies ever.
That was my gateway into Mel Brooks movies. That was the first movie I saw in a movie theater.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have a movie theater until I was like 10. Small town.
I think that was my first Mel Brooks movie, Spaceballs. That I knew of. Actually, no, it was Young Frankenstein. I think Young Frankenstein was the first one I saw on TV, I think. But my favorite is Blazing Saddles. I know it's technically a taboo movie unless you understand what the movie is actually getting at. So I'll leave it at that. Because a lot of people think, oh, because they say a certain word a lot in this movie. But the reason they do that is because they're trying to show how racism and there's if you get the gist. I don't know if any of you guys ever seen it, but if you watch the movie, it's hilarious. But really pay attention to what they're trying to say because it's really an and for a movie made in the 70s, it's very anti-racist and anti-segregation. And this is how stupid people look when they act like this.
I haven't seen it, but I do know that a lot of people say that it is really, truly a real. I mean, a lot of his work, or most of it, is satire or a parody of some sort. But I think that one is a little bit more of the, I guess, not intense, but like a little bit more a stronger message, I guess.
And it's in your face. It's very in your face. Yeah.
I guess intense is a good enough word.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What about you?
I say Spaceballs as well, and he also played Melephant Brooks in Toy Story 4.
He did.
Yeah.
And on Disney or Paramount is History of the World Part 2.
Yes.
Right.
Ooh, that'd be good.
It's a series.
But, yeah. I mean, I like all those types of movies too, but for me, the one like Spaceballs clearly was my first one, but High Anxiety. It's where he kind of plays on the Alfred Hitchcock Psycho theme. It's a parody of that. It's so good. So good.
Then there was Dracula Dead and Loving It as well.
Mm-hmm.
With Leslie Nielsen. Yeah.
Would you say Spaceballs or Robin Hood Men in Tights is the most like zeitgeisty, I guess popular, whatever you would call it? Which one would you go with? Because I feel like Robin Hood Men in Tights, but it might just be my age.
I would go with Robin Hood Men in Tights. I think that's more popular than, although they're both pretty popular. I think because I think Robin Hood Men in Tights came out in an era where it grabs a bunch of eras together at the same time. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway,
It came out in the early 90s. Dave Chappelle's in it. So how can you not like it? I mean, I just watched it this morning.
Really?
I did.
Well, we talked
I was supposed to be working.
No, you were working.
Sure I was. Your tax dollars at work. So yeah, that's pretty much what we got going on. Laura, you guys have another episode coming out this week. What is it you guys are going to be covering on that one?
It's actually, we got two. So our first episode was the defensive prospects. The next episode that's coming out, hopefully tomorrow, depending on how well YouTube treats me tonight, is about Philip Machar. And then we talk about some names to watch in the 2024 draft. Who our prospect guests were excited about. And then we took a bunch of questions from listeners. We didn't get to all of them. That's how many questions we got. We're so lucky. So we got to as many as possible. And that's the Friday episode. It's like, it's just a mailbag, but it is a prospect related mailbag. And then I have some more fun stuff planned for next week as well.
What is it? What is it?
I can't tell you. I never confirm guests until after the recording now, because we've been burned so many times. I won't say that somebody's going to be on. I'll just be like, there's an expert on goalies. Ask the question. but I think we're still in a stage with Canadiens fandom that the rebuild is still ongoing. We're still, I would say, early in it. So looking to the future is really our theme.
Yeah. And it's much better to look at that than to look at the infirmary.
All the Canadians are still in there. You open the door, it's like clown car. They all fall out, other than Nick Suzuki.
Maybe if we didn't have a 90-year-old doctor that's been there since the Howie Morenz days, we'd be a little bit better. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Get rid of the trainers. They're the ones.
Broken leg. Put the leeches on.
Just rub some Robitussin in it and go put some dirt on it. You'll be all right.
All right,
so final
thoughts.
Monahan. Keep playing.
So the final thoughts, Matt. You've been friggin' quiet, so I'm going to give you the first go.
I'll say shout out to Patrice Bergeron, a phenomenal career with the Boston Bruins, a guy that he was a compensated pick when Bill Guerin left the Boston Bruins in 2002, and they turned that pick in 2003 into him. He turned into their captain, 6-time Selke winner, 1,294 games, 1,040 points, triple gold club, 6-time Selke winner, Stanley Cup winner. He won the Messier Leadership Award. Like, the guy has done it all. He's played phenomenal for Canada. As a Bruin, you want to hate him, but as a hockey player, you got to respect him, and wish him all the best in his retirement. And if Ken Hughes can pull off another bring home a guy that and bring him into the Canadiens, that would be amazing. Don't see it happening, but a guy can hope, right? So best to Patrice Bergeron.
Treg?
What do you call it when Batman skips church?
Oh no.
Christian Bale. Why do
I'm mad at
seagulls
myself for laughing at that.
why do seagulls fly over the sea? Because if they flew over the bay, they'd be bagels.
That was bad.
Where did you find this?
I have a whole calendar. I got 365 of these.
Oh wow.
How well did I hang that picture up? I nailed it.
So was this supposed to be a gift, or did they give this to you to punish you?
My wife gave it to me for Christmas. It's supposed to go to the office at work, but I kept it here for hours of enjoyment. Anyway, now my final thoughts is the same. Patrice Bergeron, good luck to you. Glad you're gone, but no, I'm kidding. Remarkable player, well deserved, future Hall of Famer. That's all I really have. I don't really have anything else. Thanks, Laura, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's always good to have fellow podcasters onto our show.
Thank you
That's
so
it.
much.
That's all
And
I got.
obviously, we'll have to have you guys on ASAP.
whenever.
Locked on unfiltered.
We got to filter
After
it
dark.
on our show. That's the thing.
Locked on
Well,
after
don't let
dark.
Matt on then. Do it on a night Matt's not around, because he drops F-bombs like
Yeah, I did good on this show. I did good on this
You
show.
did.
You did.
Wait till we're
Now,
operating.
Laura, do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to add to what you both said and say the Bruins are now without Patrice Bergeron. And in fact, I'm trying to think of who their top line center is going to be, and it doesn't look that great right now.
Sacha. I've seen online one of the Bruins guys had Zacha's their top
Great.
line
Good luck.
center.
And thank you, obviously, for having me on.
Well, Laura, thank you very much for coming. So for my final thought, I want to just say Dvorak is available for trade if the Bruins are listening. Just pointed that out there. I mean, 2 firsts, hey, why not?
And they'll even throw in Hoffman if they need a winger.
Absolutely. Just
Which
to be
after
nice.
Marchand and Pasternak, they kind of do. They don't really have anybody. JVR. Woo. They'll probably still win 90 games. I don't know how they did it last
I
year.
know.
They're signing Jonathan Taves once he finds out he's healthy.
Jesus. So so again, I just want to thank you, Laura, for coming on. I asked you to come and there was no question right away. Yes, anytime, just let me know. So I really appreciate that availability. So
No, anytime, for real. Anytime you need me, just ask.
Because we love bringing on other podcasters, and you guys over at Locked On, I mean, you guys put out great product, and we may as well ride your coattails a little bit.
Pretty locked on over there.
I think one of the things that I love about like the podcast that I've been on, and I know we're in the Habs community, it's not always like this, Like, but there's a lot of mutual respect. I saw Matt. I've been avoiding Twitter, but I did see that, you recommended people, and I honestly like thank you for including me in that, because
No
I
problem.
do find that as Habs fans, like, you have to weed out a lot. You have to weed through a lot of the noise, and so when you appreciate people's work, you need to not only participate in it, like having you guys on, or being on, but also like share that kind of stuff, and I try to make it a point anytime I mention it, I'll mention like what podcast you're from or what blog you're from and things like that. And I find that like that's how our side of the community grows and drowns out the noise.
100% agreed. So, for everyone who's listened this week, we want to thank you very much for tuning in and listening. We know it was more for Laura than for us, and we don't mind that. Really don't.
And it was a much better show than last week.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It didn't go off the rails anywhere near as bad as last one. So for those of you who have stuck with us all these years and listened to us and have listened through this episode, I want to thank you very much. And remember,